size, shape, and coloring to send to manufacturers. Once picked, the blocks are loaded up on trucks either by hand or crane and sent across Pakistan. Historically, Pakistan couldn't process this raw pink salt, so much of it was exported to India cheaply. India would treat the salt, label it as made in India, and sell it at a premium. Pakistan saw little of the profits. NPR reported that a ton of salt sold to India for $40 could fetch $300 in Europe. In 2019, a social media campaign calling for the end of salt exports to India went viral. That same year, the Pakistani government banned all salt exports to India. The goal, returning the profits to Pakistan.
23% जो रॉक सॉल्ट की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग थी या जो प्रोडक्शन थी जो पाकिस्तान की वो इंडिया को हम एक्सपोर्ट करते थे रॉ फॉर्म में, जो कि फिर वो री एक्सपोर्ट होती थी ओवरसीज में सेम मार्केट में जहां हम ऑलरेडी अभी एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं राइट नाउ. गवर्नमेंट का डिसीजन ये बहुत फायदेमंद है हमारे लिए.
But some Pakistani salt exporters suffered. They didn't speak English and couldn't meet Europe's tough import standards. Only about a dozen exporters saw an opportunity to sell products under Pakistani labels directly to Europe. Mohammed was one of them. Every month he purchases 300 tons of salt from the mine for his company Himalayan Decor International.
क्योरा माइन से तकरीबन सॉल्ट लोड होता है ट्रकों में और मुख्तलिफ ट्रकों में लोड होकर बारास्ता मोटरवे हमारी फैक्ट्री लाहौर काना डिफेंस रोड पे आता है, जिसका सफर 350 किलोमीटर बनता है.
His artists turn these blocks into more than 200 different products.
जैसे कि नेचुरल सॉल्ट लैंप है, इसके साथ साथ ज्योमेट्रिकल शेप्स हैं, एनिमल लिंक सॉल्ट है, ईटिंग कुकिंग प्लेट्स हैं, इसके साथ साथ वॉल्स की जो सी टाइल्स होती हैं वो हम लोग बना रहे हैं. इसके साथ हम लोग हीटिंग सॉल्ट के अंदर काम कर रहे हैं काफी सारा.
Most of the work is done by hand, but drills and saws have sped up the process in recent years.
उसके बाद उसकी क्वालिटी को चेक किया जाता है, चेक करने के बाद उसकी वॉशिंग होती है, वॉशिंग के बाद उसके अंदर बल्ब और उसके अंदर वुडन बेस इंस्टॉल करके उसको पैकिंग के मराहिल में लेके आया जाता है. हमारे पास तकरीबन महीने के अंदर 10 से 15 हजार सॉल्ट लैंप्स की प्रोडक्शन है.
Over in Karachi, RM Salt Pakistan grinds up blocks into table salt.
हमारे पास तकरीबन महीने के अंदर 10 से 15 हजार सॉल्ट लैंप्स की प्रोडक्शन है.
Over in Karachi, RM Salt Pakistan grinds up blocks into table salt.
बेसिकली ये इसका रॉ मटेरियल है जो कि डिफरेंट साइजेस में आप देख सकते हैं. यहाँ पर कुछ रेंजेस हैं 2 to 3 kg, 3 to 5 kg, और ये हमारी लार्ज साइड पे आ जाता है जैसे 9 to 12 हो गया, 12 to 15 kg हो गया. ये रेंजेस में होते हैं बेसिकली.
Blocks are fed into the grinder and broken down into smaller grains. Workers bag and weigh 1,000 of these pouches of pink salt every hour. Like Muhammad's factory, RM Salt also makes lamps and other specialty products.
After the raw material we get, we convert it with a different shape as per our order. Like you can see in the cutting machine. He is cutting different sizes.
On this saw, water prevents dust from flying up, but on the grinders it's not possible, which is why Muhammad's staff wore masks even before the pandemic. Over at RM Salt,
as you can see this facility, we have installed a vacuum through which we can absorb the dust. This is the order of USA, one of our client. We are making these goods for them, the moon shape and the heart shape as well. Double drill के बाद हम लोग इसको washing process से गुजारते हैं. इसमें हमें मैनुअली काम करना पड़ता है, उसकी वजह है कि इसके साइजेस जो है वो डिफरेंट होते हैं.
The lamps are then coated with a gel to prevent humidity from interacting with the salt, and then they're shrink wrapped. RM Salt ships 30 containers of products every month. Muhammad exports about 80% of his products, primarily to Western countries like the US, UK, and Spain, where demand has spiked in the last decade because of the alleged health benefits.
यहाँ पर 3 कलर का नमक है, व्हाइट है, रेड है और पिंक है. इसके अंदर व्हाइट के अंदर है सोडियम क्लोराइड, पिंक के अंदर मैग्नीशियम है और रेड में आयरन शामिल है. 98% तो ये सोडियम क्लोराइड ही है, NaCl है, जो कि नॉर्मली सी सॉल्ट भी है. लेकिन इसके एडिशनली जो बेनिफिट्स हैं वो 84 मिनरल्स जो इसमें होते हैं, जैसे कि कैल्शियम है, मैग्नीशियम है, पोटेशियम है.
However, it's such a very small percentage of the salt makes up these minerals that you are highly unlikely to get any real benefit or any trace of them in your regular serving of salt itself. But nutritionally, it's pretty much similar to regular salt.
It's also pretty similar tasting to sea salt. But others claim Himalayan salt has healing powers, whether inhaled, used in spa treatments, or in lamp form.
There's a lot of different homeopathic remedies that can seem very, very appealing, but actually they're not grounded in evidence.
And it's these false health claims that have driven the price up. Himalayan salt can cost up to 20 times the price of normal table salt.
Normally जो price start होती है pink salt pouch की वो normally एक manufacturer से वो 60 cents से शुरू होती है और एक मैं 1 kg बैग की बात कर रहा हूँ जो कि सेल होता है रिटेल मार्केट्स में अराउंड $9 होता है.
But that money doesn't always make it back to the miners. They take home less than 1,500 rupees a day, not much more than the cost of this bag of Himalayan sea salt at Walmart. And those salaries have stayed the same, even though Pakistan has severed its salty relationship with India, and the pink salt is seeing growing demand abroad.
पिंक सॉल्ट की डिमांड इस टाइम पूरी दुनिया में दिन ब दिन बढ़ रही है. मेरा नहीं ख्याल कि इसकी खरीदो फरोख्त में कहीं पे कोई कमी आई है. क्यों? कि लोग इसको बेशुमार इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं और दिन ब दिन इसकी फरोख्त बढ़ रही है.
Luckily, the mountain won't run out of salt anytime soon. It's estimated only about 220 million tons of salt have been excavated here, nothing compared to the nearly 6.7 billion tons left.
Ваш ребенок не хочет учиться. Вы устали с ним делать домашние задания. Переживаете за его будущее. Он ничего не хочет, а вы устали работать на репетиторов. Все эти проблемы преследуют родителей всю школьную программу и с окончанием школы, к сожалению, не заканчиваются. Что же делать? Оставить ребенка в покое?
If a single hair is out of place on a high-end calligraphy brush, it must be removed. This intense attention to detail is part of why these brushes can cost over $1,000. You can find a beginner brush for less than $15, but for handmade brushes custom designed for a master calligrapher, artisans spend months turning raw hair into a perfect brush tip. But what makes these brushes unique? And why are they so expensive? Calligraphy is a respected art form in Japan and has been practiced for centuries. But today, there aren't many skilled brush makers left. Yoshiyuki Hata is a third-generation brush maker and has been making calligraphy brushes since he was a teenager.
この筆がね、1本作るのに20年かかって、私が50から作り始めて、今70でちょうど完成したんです。
15, наверное, не 50 уж.
His family's workshop in Kawajiri focuses on what they call no-compromise craftsmanship. Each brush tip is handmade by a single artisan. But making these brushes isn't easy.
この線が出したい線、それに合う筆を作ることですね。
For a master calligrapher like Daiso Kaneko, small differences in a brush's hardness or ink retention can drastically affect the lines it can produce.
表現したいと思った時に、この微妙な5ミリの差とか長さの差とか、本当に少しの硬さ、柔らかさや、それから毛のバネの強さとか、いろんなことが筆っていうのは一本一本違うので。
The dozens of steps involved in brush making start with selecting the hair. Different types of hair have a big impact on the price of a brush. Yoshiyuki's specialty is one of the priciest, goat hair. This hair was collected 50 years ago from the chest of Yangtze River Delta white goats. Hair from this specific breed of goat is classified as type 3 hair, based on its size, luster, and elasticity. It's a highly sought-after hair for brush making because it's soft yet durable and retains ink well.
初心者いうか、学童さんが使うのはやっぱり硬い筆、馬、タヌキ。だんだん柔らかいのは今の羊毛筆なんかは筆が19社じゃないと使えないんで。
But today,
今の羊毛筆なんかは筆が19社じゃないと使えない。
But today, this type of hair is hard to find in large quantities and can cost thousands of dollars per kilogram. Selecting high-quality hair is done entirely by eye, and it's one of the hardest skills for a new brush maker to learn.
で模様入れたら色、艶、耐久性、あと見てこれは10年20年持たないな。苗だけはそこで一本一本こう出るときに抜いていくんですよね。
But this long process is just beginning. Once the hairs are chosen, they're boiled and combed to remove any fluff. This process separates straight, long hairs, which are ideal for brush making. One of the most time-consuming steps is aligning all of these hairs. This delicate work is key to making a uniform brush, but it's largely based on experience and instinct.
とにかく自分の目と手でこうやって揃えた分が完成形なんよね、先揃える。
Throughout the process, brush makers patiently remove any imperfect or damaged hairs.
そうですね、無駄毛あんだけ取ったらもう毛がなくなるんじゃないか言われるんですが、それもこれだけ出るいうのを頭に置いて設計をするからあれだけ取って取らないと書くのに割れたりとか。いい線が出ないからね。もう筆作りを始めたのがやはり工房が遊び場だったんで、ちっちゃい頃からそれはね200パターンぐらいが頭の中にあるんですよね、設計図が。やっぱし目と手と勘ですよね。
What distinguishes Indian food is its magical use of spices.
At this stage, Yoshiyuki's vision for a brush starts to take shape. After trimming, he wets the hair and combines different bundles to create a brush that is dense and durable. Then he dips the hair in funori, an adhesive liquid made from seaweed, to hold the hairs together.
あと書道家の先生だから出た毛が1ミリ2ミリ0コマ何ミリまで言われるから、それに工程でも手を抜いたらその筆は僕はダメじゃもしそれであと書道家の先生だから出た毛が1ミリ2ミリ0コマ何ミリまで言われるから、それに工程でも手を抜いたらその筆は僕はダメじゃもし思いますね。魂が入っとらんから。
The finished brush tip is almost unrecognizable from the raw hair. But the precise work isn't over yet. Once the hair dries, Yoshiyuki ties up the ends and burns each one with a hot iron, binding the hairs together. Any mistake here could ruin a month of work. Finally, it's time to assemble the brush. Like the brush tip, each handle is custom made.
軸はやはり軸屋さんで、これは奈良の私たちみたいな親子でやっている職人さんが、太さが皆先生によって手の筆圧、大きさが違う。
This time-consuming process, along with the materials used, means these brushes can cost 100 times more than a mass-produced brush. The price varies based on the size and type of brush. A larger brush requires more hair, which naturally increases the price. Hata Bunshindo brushes often cost around $1,300, but some brushes can cost a lot more.
僕が作った筆の中で一番高いものは200万ぐらいのものになります。先代が作ったものですと300万ぐらいのものがあります。
Despite the high price, these brushes are essential tools for calligraphers like Daizo. He followed in the footsteps of his father and grandfather and has been practicing calligraphy for 20 years.
だから自分がイメージしているものに筆を合わせてくる場合と、筆で作品がイメージが膨らんでいくというか、これ優しい表現をしたいときは少し柔らかいそういうことを選びますし、きちっとしたものを描きたいときは少し短めのちょっと硬めの筆を選んだりということで、自分に合う筆っていうのを探していくのは非常に楽しいですし。
Some brush makers mix natural and synthetic hair to make brushes more affordable, but Yoshiyuki remains committed to using only the highest quality materials. Kozo, Yoshiyuki's son, will be the workshop's 4th generation brush maker.
やはり父も職人であまり言葉を通して伝えるっていうことはしないしできない人間なので、自分が見て学ぶ、それから作っていったものの結果がいいものになれば父はうなる、よし、それ悪ければもうただひたすら違う。
But like many traditional crafts, the future of brush making is unclear. Demand for handmade brushes is in decline. Some brush makers have started selling makeup brushes to bring in new customers. But the main concern for Yoshiyuki and his family is the lack of raw materials.
5代目がこれから出てくるのか、それからその人がやるときにいい原料が果たしてあるのかっていうものが一番懸念してますね。筆業界全体が作る人が減ってきたり、書道業界の人口も減っているので、やはり下火にはなるんですが、それは常にずっとこれから僕が職人人生の中で課題にあると思います。
This is one of the last places in the world that makes papyrus paper. People in this small Egyptian village reinvented the ancient process in the 1970s, and the industry thrived selling papyrus art to tourists. But today, there's little demand for the paper, and the plant is nearly extinct in Egypt. Those that remain are determined to carry on this piece of Egypt's history. We visited El Karamus to see how the ancient craft is still standing. Atif Mohammed Shahaita spends about 2 hours harvesting papyrus by hand from the single acre he owns. It takes a year for a papyrus seedling to grow to this size. After it's cut down, it grows back in 1 or 2 months. At one point, the village's land was filled with the plant. But today, there are only 10 acres left. Atif carries the plant about a mile to his workshop, where he employs 7 people. They chop the stalks based on the size they want the paper. Then, workers spend the entire day cutting the papyrus into thin strips using a fishing line. This method is more efficient than the ancient process.
كان عشان يشرخوا بالسكينة، احنا عندنا فتلة خيط بلاستيك.
But it's still exhausting.
مسكة الخيط كده ومسكة العود يعني مش سهلة، مش أي حد يعرف يعملها.
The strips soak in hot water mixed with potassium hydrate for a couple days. The chemicals speed up the fermentation process.
بنشرخ بيها. عندنا التخمير كان زمان هم بيخمروا بيبطي أسبوع واثنين، احنا بنقعد بنخمر يوم واثنين.
Then they rinse the strips with water and chlorine to lighten the color.
اللون الورقه كانت غامقه عندهم، احنا عندنا صنعنا اللون بالكرول، عاد عندنا كرول بيدينا اللون الفاتح والغامق نتحكم فيه يعني.
Workers lay out the wet papyrus strip by strip. Each sheet of paper has 2 layers, one vertical and one horizontal, to strengthen it. Then, the stack goes into the compressor to dry.
كان زمان ايام الفراعنه كان لما يجوا يكبسوا الورق بقى يجيبوا حجاره ويكبسوها، احنا عندنا مكابس.
After that, the sheets are sandwiched between pieces of cardboard to soak up any leftover moisture.
100% كده الورقه نشفت اهي. كده خلصوا على غيار، كده تمام، حطوا في كيس ونعد الورق لايه مثلا واحد عايز مثلا 500,000 ورقه بنديها له.
Atef sells the paper to artists across the village, including Saeed Tarahan. He started out farming the plant, and today he works as an artist.
فتعال وخد لك شوف شتله وخد لك صغيره وخد لك مزروعه شفتها وخد لك بدات تكبر، والموضوع بدا يعني نكبر معاه. اكبر فتره من عمري وانا بمارس بقت جزء مني.
But since the COVID-19 pandemic put a halt on tourism, he struggled to find a market. He had to close down his shop and lay off his workers just a couple weeks ago. Now he works out of his home.
المفروض واخد بالك ده شكل انوس موجود على خزنة توت عنخ آمون، ادي اسمه موجود، وانوس واخد بالك على خزنة، ده مقطع منه. المفروض ان صندوق المجوهرات بتاعه وده واخد بالك. هنبدا واخد بالك من المساحات ونعمل شكله اللي موجود في الاصل يعني.
All of Saeed's paintings include ancient Egyptian motifs to pay homage to papyrus's origin.
كان ليها عند الفراعنه واخد بالك تاريخ وليها قيمه، احنا حاسين بيه، وعشان كده واخد بالك يعني لان دي قصه وتاريخ، فاحنا محتفظين واخد بالك بالكلام ده وعارفين.
Egyptians invented papyrus paper at least 5,000 years ago, replacing clay tablets and revolutionizing the written word. They used it for things like marriage contracts and shopping lists. They also turned the plant into a weaving material for sandals and baskets. Cheaper paper made from wood pulp or plant fibers eventually replaced papyrus paper, and the plant became nearly extinct in Egypt by the early 1800s, until an art professor and an engineer brought back seeds from other African countries in the 1970s. They set up plantations and workshops in El Karamus, and papyrus became the center of the local economy.
الورق البردي لما نزل قراموس احنا اشتغلناه فيه، كان احنا بنزرع اراضينا قمح، الجبن هو افضل من زرع القمح يعني بيكسب.
Almost everyone in the village was involved with processing raw materials or making artwork to sell to tourists. Saeed got into papyrus because his cousin was the art professor who helped revive it. He remembers it as a turning point for the village.
فدي يعني زراعه جديده لكن اثرت فينا واخد بالك يعني اقتصاديا، المردود والعائد الاقتصادي واخد بالك والثقافي والاجتماعي لا غيرتنا واخد بالك الطاقه. كان تغيير واخد بالك للاحسن.
But after the Arab Spring uprisings in 2011, tourism in Egypt crashed. The country saw a 63% drop in visitors over the following years through 2016. And the market for papyrus paper nearly vanished. A decade later, the industry had just started to recover when the pandemic hit. Saeed has gotten just one order in the past week. A painting like this normally sells to tourist shops for 50 Egyptian pounds, or $3. Bigger and more detailed pieces go for up to 500 Egyptian pounds, or $32. But with sales down, Saeed has had to work another job to keep his business afloat. And he says he'll do everything he can to save the art.
الناس اصبحت واخد بالك النهارده بقت حاجه اساسيه جدا في حياتنا. لا ما ينفعش ما ينفعش. شعوري انا الشخصي واخد بالك في حاله ان انا يعني احس واخد بالك ان انا افتقدت حاجه مهمه جدا جدا في حياتي.
Atef is also determined to keep Egypt's history alive.
دي مش حكايه فلوس، ان هي ايام جدي وابويا ان هي موجودين واحنا اتربينا عليها يعني ازعل جنبي من الخرط اللي في الورد البرد يعني.
And with Egypt's tourism industry expected to recover this year, Saeed is holding out hope for papyrus.
أنا توقعي إنه لهذه الحرفة الازدهار إن شاء الله بدليل حجم المتاحف اللي بتنشأ وحدات في مصر، وهي عموما السياحة في مصر تمرض ولا تموت.
Ой, 12 час прибыл. Наоборот, да нет, наоборот.
You want a catchy melody? I got you. You want a happy melody? I got you. Click below to get access to thousands of melodies and chord progressions inside of my MIDI pack. Over